Good evening, I'm Lee Sinclair, and welcome to PM Magazine. Tonight, I'm sitting in a scale replica of a World War II Stuka dive bomber. Now, even though this is a replica, it's the only flying Stuka left in the entire world. Tonight, I'm going to meet the man who built it single-handedly. I'll be back with that in a minute, but first, here's Eric to tell you what else is coming up on tonight's show.
Thanks a lot, Lee. Discos may not be the craze they once were, but they're still pretty popular, and there's still some money to be made in them. In fact, at our second story tonight, we're going to see a TV show where people like this can make a few dollars. We're going to follow a Pittsburgh couple as they dance their way to Hollywood. They're hoping their flashy footwork can win them $25,000. In our department, Chef Tal shows how to give any dessert a professional look. Dr. Jim Wasco has a body quiz on a medical problem we should all watch out for, hypertension. And Linda Harris begins a great escape to Florida, a great state for a vacation. But first, let's go back to Lee and get a look at an exact replica of a World War II Stuka bomber.
World War II. Although to many of us it is just a page out of a history book, there are those for whom it stirs up hauntingly realistic memories. Louis Langhurst remembers World War II, even though he didn't fight in it. His occupation as a manufacturer of strategic materials kept him from becoming directly involved, but it didn't stop him from wanting to serve his country. Over 3 decades after that, war had become history. Louis, by now retired, had the chance to play at war by building his very own dive bomber in the backyard hangar of his 70-acre home. He chose to build a Ju-87B2 German Stuka, a plane considered one of the most terrorizing Nazi weapons of World War II. Having already designed and built 2 airplanes, Louis was prepared to tackle the challenge of building a Stuka. And quite a challenge it was indeed. There were no design plans available for his project. In fact, there were only 3 Stukas left in the world, and these were all in museums. But Louis did feverish research for 3 years before even beginning to build the plane.
Now, how can you take a plane with no plans available and build something out of it?
Well, you have to have something to copy. Since this is a replica, I copied a lot of information from the Stuka that was in the Museum of Science and Industry at Chicago, and at that time it was on loan to the EAA Museum at Milwaukee. And it was all in pieces, and so I just took a lot of pictures, detailed pictures of it, and took a lot of measurements, made a lot of notes, and that gave me the information to make my 3-view drawings. You have to start with a 3-view drawing.
A little over 1,000 hours later, and that's over a period of 9 years, Louis produced a 7/10 scale replica of what he calls his grotesque, oddball, crank-wing monster, the only flying Stuka in the world today. Louis spared no detail in building his Stuka. Items on the exterior of the plane were reproduced as carefully as were the controls of the original model.
What was the hardest part of building the plane?
Well, I'd been asked that question, and somebody said, where did you find the trouble spots? But I really can't recall any part of it that wasn't a problem, because it was all new. Everything had to be figured out and done as we went along. And as long as you stay with the standard aircraft methods and use standard aircraft materials, and you're used to those 2 things, then it's not too hard.
What was the happiest moment of owning this plane?
The day that I flew it, even though it was a hairy flight, that just had to be the day, because after I made that flight, even though I had problems on that first one, I knew what I had to do to solve those problems. And we pulled that airplane back in the hangar, and my wife and I popped the cork on a bottle of champagne that a friend of ours had given us just for that occasion. And what a day that was.
Louis used American instruments on his German replica because they were easier to interpret. The plane is all metal and cost about $12,000 to build.
Louis, now tell me the differences between this Stuka and a real one.
Because this is a scaled version, is bound to be what they call scaling effect. Mm-hmm. It's not serious because this is not scaled down extremely. But we talked to a couple Luftwaffe pilots who had flown the real thing. And in comparing notes with them, there are considerable similarities between this one and the real thing. For instance, when you put this airplane into a dive, it'll go right where you aim it, whereas a civilian airplane tends to pull out by itself. This one will bore right into where you have it aimed, and it's responsive. You fly it all the time you're in it.
Although Louis can no longer fly his Stuka for medical reasons, he says it's still the pride and joy of his life. And his happiest moments are when he, his wife Renee, and his friend Colonel Reggie Braddock push the giant toy out of its hangar and taxi it onto his 1,700-foot runway. He must then take the gunner's seat as Colonel Braddock flies it, but that doesn't diminish the thrill one bit.
Since I got to do the initial flight tests, that was the part that I wanted to do so bad, and I did do that. And now, since my good friend Colonel Braddock does the flying when we go to air shows or do any distance flying, we know each other so well that it's almost like me flying the airplane anyway.
Louis says that some people have seen the swastika on his plane and come up to him and complain bitterly, but to him, it's not a matter of ideology. He put it there so that the plane would be totally authentic. And we'll be back in a minute with our PM departments. Don't go far.